A lot of people can destroy relationships because they don't know how to manage relationships. And that's true not just with their significant others, but also with their own employees. And so ego can do a lot of damage. And so I think the biggest downfall I've seen, executives or CEOs is just their ego, get in the way. The Bible talks about humility a lot. Okay. I tell people all the time is like, either God humbles you or you humble yourself. Either way, you're going to get humbled. When someone allows their ego to get the best of them, what usually happens is they're going to get humbled. When God humbles us, it's really painful because it's usually something unexpected.
How does someone know how to hire the right coach?
When you're looking at a coach and you look to see, okay, have they ever created a business like my business? Have they ever had successful exits?
Sometimes you got to, and if you're a business, you have to turn down the business because not always what God wants. And it's been a testament in my life, but you have to aligning values with, who you're teaming up with. Hey guys, welcome back to the Young CEO podcast. Today I've got a special guest, my coach, my mentor, came in. We had a whole coaching strategy this morning. Welcome to the podcast, Larry from Fueled by Fire. Excited to have you on the show.
It's good to be back.
Yes, it is good to be back. And this episode is going to be fire. We were talking about it in the beginning, and I've got questions and stuff picked out for you to answer. All you guys that are listening and have been subscribed to the Young CEO podcast, you're not going to want to miss out on this one because we're going to go over business, leadership, mindset, and all the things on how to be a CEO. It might even be a business owner, a husband, a father to kids. Today's going to be a packed full podcast, and I want to make it quick. But Larry, I know this is the second time you've been on the podcast. You were on our very first podcast, which you had your wife on, Stacy Wallace, also our coach. Tell the audience again, who are you? Fueled by Fire, and what do you do every day?
So Fueled by Fire, I'm the Chief Operating Officer, co-founder. My wife, Stacy, is the CEO and founder of Fueled by Fire, and we help faith-based business owners and entrepreneurs not only do revenue, but go from revenue to profit and ultimately to extravagant generosity. And so we do that by helping them in 7 different areas, and we like to call them the 7 F's. Faith, family, finance, fitness, focus, freedom, and fun.
I love that. You said something about from going to revenue to profits, and I feel like that's a big thing that we work on every single day, and you get those calls. I remember starting a company, you go for the revenue because of the high numbers. Talk about well, number one, I'm gonna come back to that.
Yes.
First, I want to know how do you deal with a high powered CEO like Stacy Wallace, as a wife, as a mom to your kids? I want to know just personally, how does someone deal, how does just going along with she's always on the run, always coming up with all these things, how you as Larry Wallace, I just want to know, how do you deal, that's a lot.
Yeah. She has infinite capacity.
Yeah.
It amazes some people. It used to amaze me. I'm used to it now.
Yeah.
I have to say though, every now and then, it still amazes me. We've been married for 28 years.
Wow.
We have, we've been together for 30. We have 2 grown children, Peyton, who's getting ready to turn 25, and Alexia, who's getting ready to turn 24 in September. And so we actually so we haven't always worked together. I mean, we've worked together from time to time, but we haven't worked building a business together like Fueled by Fire until about 5 years ago. And so we've worked together in companies, but she had a role and I would have a significantly different role. And so, but we're actually building this company together, just her and I. And so we literally are together all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously not today, but most of the time we're literally 6 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's I think over the years, we've learned how to work together. We understand each other's strengths. We understand each other's weaknesses. We complement each other a lot in our strengths and weaknesses. And, I think over time, it's like you just kind of melt into each other so much that you almost know what the other person's thinking, and you know how the other person's going to react to certain things, and you just get to know each other so well that you just start to blend your leadership styles and also desires and wants and all those kind of things.
Yeah. And when was it? 2021, 2022 when we met you guys?
Yeah, 2021.
2021. So yeah, I just remember Kolton, he's the one that first you all called into the office, and then he came down there and everything. And I just remember it's a marriage, y'all's marriage and the way that you two work together is something that I look up to and in a leader, in a godly leader like you are, raising 2 kids, a wife, and having a marriage where you can work together and build something. So I just honestly, if you guys don't know Larry and Stacy Wallace, they run a coaching business, but it's more than that. It's a business that wins over souls. And I've just been it's changed my life completely. I remember the first time I met, I had zero clarity. And then, we were on the verge of bankruptcy, and then we went from 9 million or 6 million to 13 million in 8 months. Yeah. And it was after that clarity of knowing who I was and then dropping the ego and, finding God and bringing that closer. And I was actually talking to Zeke the other day, and some of the things that I see in your marriage, I'm helping the people around me. I'm like, hey, I seen this in their marriage. I think that if you put this in your marriage, it would work. Yeah. And I've seen the results, and it's crazy. And if you guys haven't seen that or follow them on Instagram, go follow them because it's inspiring. But today, Larry, I don't have Stacy on the podcast today, so we're gonna make it about Larry today. I love you, Stacy. But I'm gonna go over some questions because I want this episode to be business. How a godly man, leads a company. Can you lead a company without leading yourself first? So today's first question is, what's the number one character flaw that holds CEOs back from scaling?
Their ego.
Yeah.
I can remember one of the first conversations that you had with Stacy, because I think you asked her, what's the one thing I can work on as a...
It's not the answer I was wanting.
Yeah, she said, your ego. Yeah. You were like, what? Yeah. What do you mean by ego?
Yeah.
But honestly, I've seen so many CEOs, so many founders, so many executives cannot control their ego. Literally, the ego is what destroys their business. Mm-hmm. And it's because, unfortunately, they get to a place of significance. They get to a place where they've built something of significance, a business, or they've generated revenue, or they've generated profits, and then they let the ego get the best of them, whether it's how they treat other people, or they think that they're invincible. They think that rules, morals don't no longer apply to them because they're above that. They become a god to themselves. Mm-hmm. And I've seen so many moral failures from executives who didn't have success before, have success, and then allow for women, or, and if it's a woman who's become an executive, a man, come into their life, and they're married, and they allow, a moral failure to happen. And I've seen so many companies get destroyed because of the ego, takes over. Mm-hmm. And so the ego can show up in not just moral failure, but the ego can also show up in just how they treat other people. They think that they're, too good to be, to talk to certain people, or they lead with a whip, versus, something right. else that would be softer or whatever. And so if you think about it, a lot of people can destroy relationships because they don't know how to manage relationships. And that's true not just with their significant others, but also with their own employees. And so ego can do a lot of damage. Mm-hmm. And so I think the biggest downfall I've seen with executives or CEOs is just their ego, get in the way.
I just have to know, like, do you, like, when you first, like, you have to have, like when you start a company and you have that, is that, like, having ego, like, let's say you scale a company and then all of a sudden your company gets big, but doesn't, like, if you had ego in the beginning, like, do you just get more, like, your ego's higher and you don't care? Like, what happens when a very successful person becomes, went from having nothing to now having everything?
Yeah.
Like, what happens then?
Well, the Bible talks about humility a lot, okay? And so I tell people all the time is like, either God humbles you or you humble yourself. Mm-hmm. Either way, you're going to get humbled. And so when someone allows their ego to get the best of them, what usually happens is they're going to get humbled. And so when God humbles us, it's really painful because it's usually something unexpected. If we humble ourselves, it's less painful and you usually end up better off for it. So when what happens is when a CEO or a business owner starts getting this success, money only makes you more of what you are.
Right.
And so if you come into that situation and you're making more money than you ever have, you're having more success than you ever have. If you haven't dealt with that ego part of you, mm-hmm. It's just going to get amplified.
Right.
And so I go back to, you're either going to humble yourself or God's going to humble you. But either way, you're going to end up getting humbled. And sometimes when people don't humble themselves, then the humbling comes in, a divorce, or they lose their business, or they lose a big contract or a series of contracts. But somehow there is a humbling that will come. It's just humble yourself first, and you don't have to deal with the more painful humbling.
I just have to know, like, did you ever have, like, you've been CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies. You've taken a company to market cap of $1 billion.
Yeah.
Did you ever have ego?
Yes.
And how did you deal with it, or how did you overcome that, or like, did God humbled you?
God humbled me. My wife humbles me. But I felt like one of the seasons of humbling. So there's actually several seasons, but there's two significant ones. One was after the company that you spoke of that went public. We did very well, and we invested our money in stock market and real estate and various other things. And 2008 market crash, and real estate literally tanked. And everywhere where our money was wrapped up, obviously it just all disintegrated. And up until that point, I had a huge ego. I tell people all the time that I felt like, looking back, it was like I was living like a business rock star. I would fly first class everywhere, or we would fly private, or we would, once we got to our destination, we always had chauffeurs driving us around, all this stuff, and traveling all over the world. And it was like, I was like living this business rock star lifestyle, mm-hmm. And going to all these parties and all this kind of stuff. And in 2008, when literally everything that we had was taken away from us. And I can remember laying on my bedroom floor over my Bible, crying my eyes out, because I was like, God, what did I do wrong? And clear as day, I'm humbling you.
Wow.
And I knew I was like, I'm so sorry. And I started repenting for the way I lived, for my attitude. And really, if you were to ask people who were on the outside, and looked at me, they probably wouldn't have said, oh, wow, he's very egotistical or anything like that. But I knew my heart. God knew my heart. And so God needed to humble me at that time. That was the season where he humbled me. There was another season where we humbled ourselves. And my wife woke up one morning and felt like the Lord had spoken to her about writing a song. And it was about, would you say yes? Would you sacrifice your life? Would you say yes? Would you lift the knife, and it was kind of a reference to Abraham and Isaac in the Bible. And so she was thinking that she was writing a song, but then she realized, wait, this isn't a song. This is actually a request. And she felt like that she needed to give up. At that time, we were doing very well in a new business, and she needed to step away from that. And so when I woke up, she tells me about her dream and tells me about what she felt like the Lord was telling her. And she says, I think that you really need to run this business, and I need to take a step back. And so I was like, okay, let's do that. And so, but after a few weeks went by, I felt like the Lord was impressing upon me the exact same thing, that it was both of us needed to step away, and that we needed to give away everything that we had at that time, to the poor. And so we did that. We both stepped away from our positions, and we literally gave all of our excess that we had to an organization that fed the poor and veterans of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so we went through this season like literally just giving it all away, and had no source of income. And, it was an intentionally humbling of ourselves. And there was like no time frame. There was no time frame like, I want you to do this. And then once you're done doing this, then you can go out and start producing income. No, it was, I want you to do this. And then I don't want you to do anything until I'd say, until I release you from the season. It was 2.5 years.
Wow.
So we went 2.5 years without a source of income, but we still had bills to pay. And so I was literally going through the attic, selling stuff. We would have, from time to time, and people from the outside, they thought that we were wealthy. We were wealthy, but we'd given everything away, but we didn't tell anybody that we were giving everything away. That wasn't a part of the mandate. It was just, I want you to give away everything, but you don't need to tell anybody about it. Right. So we were, if someone wanted to go out to eat with us, we'd say, sure, but you need to come pick us up, because we'd given away our car, so we didn't have a car. We had our house, and we had our house up for sale. But the interesting thing was, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, if we sell the house, we have money wrapped up in the house, so we can just pull that money out and we'll just live off of that money. Well, God didn't want that. Like, we went 2.5 years, the house was for sale, and nobody ever bought the house. Wow. And so it wasn't until Stacy's birthday, where she turned a certain number. I don't know if she wants me to share what number that was, but it wasn't until her birthday where God lifted that. And it was like, okay, you're released now. And literally that day, our house sells. And it was like everything just shifted. It went from the season is over. And it was like obvious it was over, because the season of abundance was back. And so anyways, that was a season where we humbled ourselves. So got humbled, and then we chose to humble ourselves. And
that's just the season that you lived through. But you got to live 2.5 years, and then now you have a very successful business. You're helping a lot of businesses break through all those different seasons that even a business goes through. So sometimes, like, we had a bad accident the other day, and Zeke was like, this is just, God has been preparing me for this season. All these different things are happening, but that's like, it's mind blowing. I don't know, it's for the people listening that God, sometimes it's because the thing that I would ask is like, why, God, why did you pick me? Like, why did you pick me to go through this? I thought that you were a good God. I thought that, this doesn't happen. Like, why would you want this to happen to me? Yeah.
Think about the disciples. So if you remember the story about the disciples being in the boat, and there was a storm crashing down all around them, and they're trying to get across the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus is asleep in the boat.
Right.
And so they're actually petrified. They're thinking they're going to drown. They think they're going to die. And they finally get to a place where they wake up Jesus in the boat and say, you got to do something. And he speaks to the storm, and the storm stops. We all know that side of the story. But what happens is like, sometimes we think the storm in our life is happening against us. But in that situation, the storm was happening for the disciples. That storm was actually pushing them across the Sea of Galilee so that they could get across faster. So they didn't have to row. They didn't have to do a lot of extra work. And so what we think sometimes is something that's been sent to be against us it's actually been sent to help prepare us for something that God has in store for us later on. And and so it's all mindset. It's a perception. Like if you perceive that, hey, all these things happen, against me or bad or whatever, that's one way that you can look at things. But if you say, God, I don't know how this is going to work out for my good, but I do believe in Romans 8:28, which you say, all things work together for my good. And so that's like if I were to say we have one of our family scriptures is Romans 8:28, because we believe that all things work together for our good, even the seemingly worst things in our life. And so, it's difficult when you're younger because things seem so big and you don't have the advantage of time and space or experience. Right. But when you get older and you start looking back, you realize that, oh, wow, God took me through that season of my life in order to prepare me for this other season of my life that I wouldn't have been prepared for if I didn't go through that.
Wow.
And so sometimes we go through seasons in our life because we have to exercise our faith that God is going to work something out for your good. Yeah. Even though it may be hard to see at that moment in time, but when you have the advantage of time and age, and you can look back and you can see how God works things together for your good, as you get older, things don't seem as so dramatic because now you have experience, but you've also exercised your faith. And so we all have to exercise our faith every day. And so when you're younger, it's more of a challenge because it's like you're exercising in the blind because you don't have the experience of God working things out yet. Because he will, but you have to have the faith that he will. But over time, as you start exercising your faith, in one situation, well, that builds your faith. It's like building a muscle. You go to the gym, you can't go to the gym. The
results, right? Yeah,
and lift 500 pounds, right? Right. It's like small steps. But eventually, as you exercise your faith, just like you exercise in the gym, you can start lifting heavy weights. But it really, you got to start off small and you got to work your way up. God knows that.
Yeah, that's perfect because my next question was, if someone's stuck at six figures, what's the first internal shift that they need to make in their company?
Hire a coach.
Hey, it's what I did. Yeah.
It's so true because sometimes we think, you know what, I can do it myself. Right. And I'll have to say, that was me. Yeah. I was that guy. Yeah. And so a lot of people say, oh, I don't need to hire a coach. But they will give up 50% of their company because they can't figure out how to build their company, without getting an investor involved. Someone who's built a business and they figure out, hey, and this was us, by the way, the first company that we ended up taking public, we had an idea of what we wanted to do and we knew what we wanted to do, but we couldn't do it ourselves. And we needed to have successful business people that had money, but also had the knowledge and wisdom and skill and track record of being able to build a business like that. So we were literally giving up pieces of our company every time that we brought someone like that inside of our business, right? Well, if I knew at that season of life that, hey, I could go out and hire a coach, just pay them a fee, and then have them give me the wisdom I need so I can go apply it to my business and keep all the revenue inside my business, I would have done that, right? But you don't know that. And so now I know a lot more. But fast forward a number of years, when we were wanting to make the transition out of building your traditional businesses to building a coaching business, because we felt like, at that season of our life, God had told us that, hey, you built businesses all of your life. Now I want you to build people. We're like, okay, well, how are you to transition to that? Because I knew we had wisdom and experience from building businesses. We've had successful exits. We've built businesses into the hundreds of millions in telecom and healthcare, nutrition, and all of these different things. So we had all of the knowledge, but how do we apply that to be able just to shift gears and market ourselves out, as coaches? So we had a friend of ours come to us and said, hey, you guys are building other people's visions or you're building these other businesses, but really if you help other people like yourself by coaching them, there's a need in the marketplace that needs to be filled, and you guys will be perfect for it, because he saw what we could bring to people. And he said, look, I hired a coach. He helped me. I feel like he could help you. Mm-hmm. So we met the guy. He comes to our house, and he hit it off. Like, it was amazing. Like, he knew exactly what we needed to do. He understood our mindset and told us everything that, like, this is the next steps that you need to take. And we totally, like, we were aligned, like, totally. It was honestly, it was amazing. It was an amazing day. And so he said, so what does that look like, financially? Because we didn't know how much he charged or anything like that. And he told us the number, and I'm like, I had the money. The money wasn't the issue, but it was like, I couldn't believe that I would need to pay this guy all this amount of money in order to have him coach us to go into this next season of our life that we knew God called us to be in, because I felt like we could just figure it out ourselves. Right. Like, surely, if he figured it out, we can figure it out, that type of a thing. Well, that was 16, 17, 18, 19, 7 years later, I finally gave in and hired a coach. Because we couldn't figure it out. Right. And it wasn't like it was complicated, but there was just certain things that we just didn't understand. And so
what happened after you hired the coach?
It was amazing. Yeah. Like, it was almost like you have a recipe on what to do. And not only when we first did, so we do what we call a free challenge, or a free 5-day challenge. And so you can go to fbfchallenge.com and register for one of our free 5-day challenges. But when we did our first free 5-day challenge, because we're marketing to people that we don't know, right? And so we run advertising, and people respond to the advertising. They sign up for the free 5-day challenge. We made back 5 times more in our first free 5-day challenge than we paid for our coaching. Wow! So it was a 5-time multiple return on our investment. And so if I would have known, or I guess I knew that, but I wasn't willing to make that leap into coaching, paying for coaching. But if I would have known that 7 years earlier, I would have done that a million times over. Yeah. Because, it would have just saved us so much time. Yeah. And so people don't realize is that that's the value of coaching, is that it will save you time. Mm-hmm. It will save you time. It saves you money, because you don't have the expense of making the mistakes and having to pay for those mistakes. It saves you energy. Mm-hmm. It saves you worry. It saves you stress. Just having somebody to bounce ideas off of, or give you guidance on the direction that you feel like you're called to go in, and what pitfalls do I need to avoid. Right. I mean, there's so much value to it. So now, what I paid for then, which I thought was so much, I paid 10 times that more now for coaching. Yeah, just to get in the rooms and to get to know what they know. Yes. Yeah. So now I pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaching, because to me, there's always a return. I didn't realize that. I wish I would have gotten that earlier in life. Right. But now I realize the value of it, and it's
what
amazing.
Is it like? There's still like I know people that are watching this too, but there's like, what about hiring the wrong coach? Like, how does someone go from, like, maybe I don't have the money, or maybe I'm like, I want to coach, I want to hire this coach, but I don't have the money. Like, do I go finance it, or like, how does someone know, like, maybe if you're stuck in this area, it might be personal or spiritual, or you might be stuck in your business. Like, how does someone know how to hire the right coach?
Yeah. Good question. Make sure they share the same values.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
We've coached a lot of people. There's a lot of people that we've come across that have hired coaches that didn't share the same values as them. And, for us, we love the Lord. we love Jesus. We're faith-based coaches. And so we're very overt in our values and what someone's going to experience with us. But sometimes people will portray themselves as faith-based, but what happens is that once they get behind after the sale has taken place, then they realize, wow, that person drinks, or wow, that person has affairs, or wow, that person, does things that don't align with your values. And so you just got to do your research. There's always testimonials. So make sure that you follow up and watch and read the testimonials that person has. And we share all of our testimonials, video testimonials, written testimonials, everything, with our future clients on our websites and different things. But testimonials is important. But honestly, the Bible talks about you can know a tree by the fruit that it bears. And so when you're looking at a coach and you look to see, okay, have they ever created a business like my business? Have they ever had successful exits? Have they ever, have they been married and divorced if that's of importance to you? Do they have healthy kids or whatever? So you have to think about what are the values, what are the things that are most important to you, and then find a coach that aligns with those values. And hey, look, I get it. We don't align with everybody. We've had people come to us that want us to coach them that are in industries that don't align with our values, and we'll have to turn them away.
Right.
And so we know that we're not supposed to be the coach for everybody, but for the ones that share the same values as us, then we're happy to coach them.
There's someone that told me not all good doors are God doors. And sometimes you got to, and if you're a business, you have to turn down the business because it's not always what God wants. And that's, it's been a testament in my life, but you have to aligning values with, who you're teaming up with. And how does Stacy put it? Some people are in your life for a reason, some for a season,
some for a lifetime,
some for life.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with that, whether, and sometimes that shows up in employees. Sometimes you have people on your team that you have to let go because their ideals or their effectiveness or their desire to actually want to continue working with their company. This shifts over time sometimes. And so those are people for a reason, you know. Some are for a season, some are for a lifetime. We want everybody to be a lifetime, but it's just not always that way.
Right. It just doesn't always work out. I want to pivot into what was the biggest leadership mistake that you made early on that if you would have avoided, maybe it'd be like I don't know. What would you say was the biggest mistake?
I know this sounds self-serving, but not hiring a coach quick enough.
Yeah.
But it's true though. I felt and it's ego,
I got it figured out. I don't need nobody.
I can figure it out. Yeah. I can do it myself. And really just not asking for help, trying to do something myself and just not asking for help because I felt like if I asked for help, that meant that I wasn't, I didn't know what I was doing or, someone would think less of me because you have to ask for help or whatever. I think that's the guy in us. Guys don't want to ask for directions when you're lost and everything. And, I think at some point or another, we're all lost, but one of the biggest mistakes is just not asking for help. And I think that shows up in a lot of different ways. I think about people who deal with emotional trauma or deal with alcohol or some kind of addiction, and they just don't seek help. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, whether it's in their personal lives or in their business lives, is they don't seek help fast enough.
Mm-hmm. I love that because sometimes, I'm 26, Kolton's 24, and we've had a lot of, different coaches throughout the 6 years of business that I've been in, going from $250 to over $65 million in business now. And so I've learned a lot along the way, but having coach, one of the biggest things is just letting your ego down and asking for help. And sometimes that's literally the hardest thing to do because you just want to figure it out because you want to be the man of the house. You want to be alpha and you want to just, I'm going to figure this out. And then what happens is you freaking fall on your face and you're like, well, I could have just, if you'd went and asked for help, someone would have like helped us. And it was like, but sometimes I think God takes you through that because he humbles you.
Yeah. It's a humbling season.
Yeah.
Right?
And he makes you like, I call it when you hit rock bottom, it's because God is the rock at the bottom, and it building your foundation on godly principles, core values, having the right people around you. Now raising a company, we have over 100 employees with our virtual assistants and everything. Is having the right core values, but aligning with the people that have the same mission. Yeah. And those are things we talked about this morning, and I'm not going to get into depth of that, but how to grow a business with the core values that we have. Sometimes it is hard, but you've got to align all together. Before we end the podcast, what's the biggest piece of advice that you've now you've been married for 28 years, successful marriage, 2 kids, one's about to get married, Peyton, he has his own business and everything. What's the biggest piece of advice that you could give someone right now that might be watching this?
To have a successful marriage?
Just to live a life of purpose, peace, and profits.
My grandfather said this to me before I got married. He said, Larry, in life, you can be right or you can be happy, but you can't be both. So in my life, I'm a very happy man because I'm never right.
I think that's going to help someone. You just got to drop the ego. I love that. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So what it means to me is give up your right to be right. Because sometimes we get so hung up on having to win arguments, whether it's with our employees or with our spouse or with our kids. And this sometimes, just say, I'm sorry. Be quick to apologize. Be quick to humble yourself because you don't have to be right. It's one of the things that I realized, I played football for Texas A&M. I love sports, very competitive, but I realized along the way that winning is very important, but you can hurt a lot of people along the way when you try to win at all cost. And sometimes the cost is too great, and that you have to realize when you cross over that line. And so sometimes people don't realize when they cross over the line, in order to win an argument, win a board game, card game, or whatever, to where it's jeopardizing relationships. And for me, it's relationships are everything. Relationships are so important because you can be the most successful person in the world, but you can also be the most lonely without relationships. And so what does all that success mean if you don't have a good relationship with someone? And so for me, first and foremost is relationship with God, Jesus. That's the most important thing. And so for our relationship and our family, I put Jesus first in our relationship and our family, and then we work on each other. Work on our relationships with each other. And I have to say, it's not always perfect. 28 years of marriage, and we continually work on our relationship. Right. And I'm not perfect. Yeah. And my wife is near as perfect as you can possibly be. And so she's always challenging me in order to be better. And I love that about her. And she's actually amazing. She challenges our whole family to be better. Yeah. And so I'm working on our relationship with our children all the time, and it's not always perfect. Right. But the thing is that we give up our right to be right, and we just continually work in our relationships. Yeah.
No, she is awesome. Both of you guys are, because I told someone the other day, I said, you need a set of friends that, or coaches or mentors, someone around you that you can get on the phone call and they either make you uncomfortable, they either challenge you, or they get you out of your comfort zone. And that's with you guys, that's every phone call. I'm I'm just not right in this one. I'm okay, whatever. I want to just go do it. But it's it's 100% true. I love that. I know someone's going to take that. And maybe you're not right all the time. but you have to be, you can't, what'd you say? You can choose to be right, or you can choose to be happy. Which one are you going to choose?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Sometimes you can choose being right, and it'll make you so unhappy. Miserable.
Yeah. And what you said about winning, because a lot of people would think like, are you talking about winning in business? But it can be winning in arguments, winning in card games, board games, winning about eating at a restaurant or something that could like mess up the whole night for someone.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, was it worth it?
Right. Because life is too short.
Yeah. At the end of the day, sometimes I ask myself, is it worth it?
Right.
You know, is it worth being right? Because sometimes I know I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is it worth it for me to make my point that I'm right?
Right.
You know, because in the grand scheme of things, I think, okay, even if I feel like, or even if I know I'm right, but it's going to prolong an argument, what's the point? You know,
Right.
I would rather just say, hey, you know what? You're right.
Right.
Yeah, it's okay. You're right. No big deal. I'm wrong. It's cool. You know, I love you, and there's no reason for us to argue over this.
Right.
But if I am right, in time, this is what I also say, time is your friend. And so in time, if I'm right, it will get exposed in time.
Right.
And then that person may or may not come back and say, hey,
you were right.
know what? You were right after all. I'm sorry, I was wrong. And it happens from time to time. But you just have to weigh out, is it that important? Because in the grand scheme of things, what's the most important thing? You know, it's your relationships, it's love, it's peace, it's all those things. The fruit of the Spirit. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd rather have the fruit of the Spirit evident in my life than me winning every argument.
Yep. I love it. Hey guys, you heard it on the Young CEO podcast. Thank you, Larry, for joining us for the second time. Down below, we're going to drop the 5-day challenge you said. Yeah. We're going to drop a link down below. We're going to drop their Instagram, their Facebook. Guys, if you want a shift in your business to go from disruption to expansion, make sure to go join their 5-day Facebook. What is it called?
Yeah, our 5-day challenge.
5-day challenge, mm-hmm. And it's at no cost, right?
Yeah, it's free.
Okay.
Yeah,
you can join at no cost. If you want to change your business, if you're looking for clarity, if you're wanting to go to the next level, which hopefully some of these questions have answered why you're being stuck, like why you're stuck in your business. It might be your relationships, your marriage. If you want to get out of that, and if you want some clarity, go join their 5-day free challenge. You'll be able to talk to Larry. I think they have a VIP night. Mm-hmm. Just join a room that's full of people that are on the same mission as you are, which is something that I love. So, guys, if you haven't subscribe to our Young CEO podcast. Go follow us on all socials, and we'll see you on the next.